It's the Inside Scoop Virginia. All the news Virginians want to know. Now here's the host of Inside Scoop Virginia, George Burke.
Welcome to Inside Scoop Virginia this week. Generally we talk about politics, partisan politics. I thought we'd give that a break for 1 week. Next week we come back with a debate between the 11th Congressional District Democratic candidates. So we'll get back to partisan politics. Tonight we are talking about politics, but it's a slightly different brand. It's environmental politics here in Virginia. We have 3 representatives of the Sierra Club who between them have done an awful lot of work over the years here on environmental issues in Virginia. We have Roger Diedrich, we have Linda Burchfiel, and we have Brooks Cressman. Welcome tonight.
Thank you.
Roger, you, before we started the show, you wanted to sort of set the scene. So why don't you?
Well, I was just going to say a little bit about what is the Sierra Club. We are a national organization. We're over 115 years old, 800,000 members, and we have it's all volunteer-led. Our president and our board of directors are all volunteers, as we are, and there are also state and local entities that also take action on various levels.
So the Sierra Club's a 501c3, I presume, so they don't actually hand out money.
Well, we're a 501c4 with a foundation attached, so we have kind of both components.
So you generally do not take, generally do not endorse individual or specific candidates?
Yes, we do.
Oh,
yes, we do.
Oh,
we do endorse candidates. We have often, and we on all levels. We endorse presidential candidates, senatorial, and so on, all down the line to local.
So we interview them, and sometimes we endorse both or neither. It all depends on their qualifications.
Have you done anything in this 11th congressional district race, or are you staying out of that one?
Some discussions,
yeah.
But no decision to move forward before in the primary.
That's a tough one. There's some good candidates in that race, and it's tough to choose between them. I think even a lot of voters are still out there trying to decide who they're going to choose on that June 10th primary. One of the things that I have on my list that I wanted to talk about, it was a summary of state energy sources and use. I look at Virginia and I think it's a coal state. Coal has been mined here for centuries. And many of our power plants are coal, not all. We got Lake Anna and those. But we also know that coal is it's a dirty source of energy. And it doesn't only impact the areas right around where those plants are located, it can impact us up here, the air quality up here and elsewhere. There's also the other impacts on some of the ways that coal is mined when they strip the tops off of mountains, which I think is just hard. Where is our state on energy at this point?
That's a good question. So a couple years ago, strategically, we sat down.
Commonwealth, excuse me.
Our Commonwealth. We sat down and the Sierra Club works on a number of issues, everything from environmental justice to energy work to cleaning up the air, water, land, so forth and so on. And Virginia has quite a range. We've got the Chesapeake Bay, we've got coastal shorelines, we've got forests, we have a lot of things that we could work on. So we sat down, we focused on, and we said, what's common all around the state? Because we have about 12 local groups around the state, and they work through a common chapter. And we said, well, energy really touches everything because global warming, that's primarily driven by fossil fuel energy production. Energy also creates air pollution, and some of that pollution gets in the water. So really, energy touches everything. So we need to focus on moving towards clean energy solutions, as we've indicated. So Virginia is a coal state. We get about 40% of the energy that's generated in Virginia, as you mentioned. About 40% is nuclear, a little over 40% is from coal, and the balance is from oil, natural gas, and other sources. So there's a substantial amount of coal being used. And I would say, more than some other states, a number of other states have moved towards more natural gas production because it's a little bit cleaner, but not so in Virginia just yet.
Do we have the ability to move towards more natural gas production? I mean, do we have the natural gas fields, or You know, it's not my expertise.
There's significant natural gas production in Virginia, but not enough. We're a net importer of natural gas, and so coal we're a net exporter right now.
So how do we balance the fact that coal is a natural resource here in Virginia, but it's a dirty resource? How do we balance that? And it's something that obviously is a plus to Virginia's economy.
Well, our first fuel should be efficiency. We use a lot of energy, but we waste a lot of energy. Virginia uses more than the national average per capita and double the amount per capita of states like Vermont, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and California. And so before we spend more money investing in a new coal-fired power plant, we should certainly invest in efficiency. And Brooke says more about
that's
that.
excellent. I mean, we use about 10% more than the national average. So we're talking about energy consumption electrical energy in particular, consumption per person in the U.S. So about 10% more than the national average. And compared to states that since the 70s have put into place very strong energy efficiency programs, and that's basically energy efficient buildings, energy efficient appliances, energy efficient lighting, they have been able to maintain their per capita use relatively constant. So California, New York, Connecticut, a number of fairly progressive states, but also states in which energy is more expensive than it is in Virginia. In Virginia, our electricity is relatively cheap because coal traditionally has been cheaper than natural gas or some other sources. Now, the price of energy is going up. As we know, Dominion has filed for an 18% rate increase this summer. And so, and the price of coal doubled effectively over the last couple of years. So, we're still going to have a cost advantage, but we are going to see cost increases. And so efficiency does a number of things. Efficiency helps us avoid new power plants, so that helps keep the air clean and fights global warming. And it also can save money, ultimately, because it reduces the amount that we're using per person, and so the energy bill per person is less, regardless of what the price is.
And on top of that, the cost of solar and wind is not going to go up. It is here, it's ours, whereas coal and other fossil fuels, it's a global market. And China and India will be always bidding up the price, and we don't get a discount as Virginians. We have to pay the global price, whereas the price will always be the same for renewables. And so the investment you make there, then you're done.
It's a big investment on the front end, and after that it's far less. There's
Exactly.
maintenance costs and some other, I presume, costs involved.
Well, cost of there's cost in renewables and putting up windmills and putting solar cells on buildings and things like that. As far as efficiency, the first 20–30% is relatively cheap. It's actually cheaper to generate through efficiency than it is through new generation. We're talking 2 to 3 cents per kilowatt hour for efficiency versus 5, 10, 15 cents for new generation, depending on nuclear or coal or natural gas or whatever. And the fuel is free for renewable energy. So basically, if we can meet our growth in demand with efficiency efforts and then start replacing some of the coal and other fossil fuel generation with renewable energy, with offshore wind, with solar hot water heating and things like that, then we can start to have an impact on our air and our water and global warming.
What about nuclear? We mentioned off camera earlier, I had covered the whole licensing process of a nuclear power plant in New England as a reporter decades ago. And there were a lot of fears at that point. It wasn't even, the environmental issues were more fears about escaping radiation and some of the other issues and warming, raising the water temperature on the Atlantic where it's located. If you listen to some of the interest groups on the nuclear side, and they'll tell you that nuclear plants are much safer now. They forget to tell you about the waste.
Well, some of that safety issues they may have made some progress. It still remains to be shown. That's the industry talking.
Yeah, of course.
But regardless of whether we, can get at that issue, what is clear is the cost is astronomical.
It is. Okay.
So the new plant that they plan to build in Virginia, which would be quite as large as the 2 North Anna plants that are there now, would cost something like $5 billion. And we can do an awfully lot of efficiency for $5 billion. And then, not to mention that they have not solved the waste problem, even for the existing plants. So right now, it's piling up at the local, at every plant in the nation. Storage is being accumulated at those plants, and there is no long-term solution for the waste. So, as someone said, it's building a house without a toilet.
When I, when I worked on the Hill, and I haven't been on the Hill in more than 20 years, the Atomic Energy Institute and those folks would send us all these, we'd get these little silica pellets, and they told us, this is how we're going to get rid of nuclear waste. Well, they still haven't succeeded with these silica pellets, and it's decades later. And nobody with even in Nevada, that whole idea of burying the waste in a repository there. Well, I'd hate to live on top of it, number one, or near it. But number two, the whole fear of getting the waste there is a homeland security issue. It's just a transportation nightmare.
And also all that weapons-grade plutonium. I mean, we're worried about terrorism everywhere else. What about that weapons-grade plutonium? And just the operation of the plants, regardless of the waste, takes a lot of water, you mentioned, to cool them. And with all the droughts we've had, like down in Georgia, there just isn't the water to even operate the plants.
That's the problem with Lake Anna, yeah. The additional, if they
were to add a plant.
Lake Anna 3, North Anna 3, if they did go ahead and build that, it would actually raise the water temperature so high, it'd be kind of ridiculous.
It'd be like taking a bath when you
it's like over, apparently
roasted.
Apparently it's been over 100 degrees at times already.
Really?
If you add another plant to that same water body.
Is that in the general vicinity of the plants? Not the entire lake, I would presume.
It's not that big of a lake.
It's not that big of a lake, yeah. And it heats up a lot in the summer because it's a very dark, there's a lot of tannin in the lake, and it just collects a lot of sunlight, and it's not that deep, so it just tends to heat up. The other thing is nuclear fuel isn't free, and the fuel cycle, it's polluting. A lot of mining involved. There's a lot of processing of that fuel. The fuel has to be transported, and it's not renewable. There's a limited amount of uranium in the ground that can be dug up to run these things. So it's subject to every limitation that every other energy source.
I recall stories about some of the mines in Idaho that are still just absolutely poisonous. The tailings and all that stuff's leached into the lakes and into the
And it gets worse
rivers.
because there is uranium found in Spotsylvania County, I think, here in Virginia, and the people there, some of them would like to mine it.
Yeah.
And it's bad enough in Idaho, which is really dry. You don't have the uranium seeping into the groundwater, but in Virginia, which is, as we all know, constantly moist, if not rain, then certainly humidity. And so there, the uranium will get into the groundwater for sure.
The tailings would be washed right into the groundwater and the surface water, and it would contaminate it all pretty quickly.
I have a friend who owns a farm in around Halifax, down on the south side. And one of the sites they're talking about for the uranium mining, I guess all they're doing at this point is studying it, is upstream a little bit. We'll talk some more about this when we get back. Just want to remind you that we'll take call-ins tonight at 571-749-1166. I have 3 representatives of the Sierra Club on, and feel free to call and raise your voice.
How far would you go to help someone? Would you go to the end of your driveway? Would you cross a street? Would you cross an ocean? To a place 6,000 miles from home? And how long would you go? Would you go for a week? A month? A year? Would you go for 2 years? Would you go if you could use your knowledge to teach someone, and in the process, maybe learn something yourself? Life is calling. How far will you go? Peace Corps.
James, don't forget your helmet.
Will do.
Not a helmet. Your bike helmet.
Oh, okay. Hi, I'm James Thrash with the Washington Redskins. On the football field, a helmet is an important piece of equipment. I also wear another helmet that's just as important. A bike helmet. It's the most important piece of equipment you'll have the next time you're out on your bike. Wear yours and make sure your kids do too. Safety first with the Skins.
Monica and her friends want you to know that you should never get near a dog when it is eating, playing with a favorite toy, or sleeping. It's really important to make time for exercise and games and keep your dog's vaccines up to date. Never leave a dog in a small, confined space. This can make dogs aggressive like Monica. If you follow this advice, you and your dog can play safely and happily together.
Now back to the Inside Scoop Virginia. Call in live and let your voice be heard. Here again, your host, George Burke.
Welcome back. Tonight we're talking about environmental issues in Virginia. I have three representatives of the Sierra Club with me this evening: Brooks Cressman, Linda Burchfiel, and Roger Diedrich. And we're going to, we welcome your calls at 571-749-1166 if you have a burning issue on it. Let's get right into it, ladies and gentlemen. Let's talk about Wise County. This has been, they want to situate a coal plant down there. If you listen to Dominion, their advertising and their promotional stuff makes it sound like they're going to be scrubbing this thing squeaky clean. There's been a lot of opposition from a lot of grassroots groups that I've seen that are not just groups that have the reputation such as the Sierra Club. Yeah, there is. Yeah. And I went to one of Governor Kane's recent town meetings where there were a whole bunch of folks who were into the one issue, and they kept raising it. And
we were there.
With different good questions. I mean, no, it was very civil. It wasn't beyond the pale in my mind. But they knew the issue. They raised it from a bunch of different angles. Of course, the governor knew the answers, and he responded from a bunch of different angles. You know, I understand the governor's position. Some of the folks I chatted with after that meeting did not. But I do understand his position, as he has to look out for the state's economic health as well as its environmental health. He has to look at the jobs that happen down there.
About the jobs and the environmental health, I know that he uses that as the reason to forget that jobs trump the environment. However, the only steady jobs, the real jobs, are I think 75 real jobs that would last
plant operator jobs.
Yeah, plant operator, good jobs. And the rest are construction jobs which have already been outsourced, so it's not helping Southwest
Which
Virginia.
would be very temporary.
Yeah, they are temporary. And
the coal mine would be, so the idea was to be a couple hundred coal mining jobs, but in fact, you can't guarantee that the coal is going to come from Virginia. It's going to come from the lowest bidder. So it may come from Kentucky or West Virginia, who knows. So you can't guarantee those jobs will be created here, if at all.
Yeah.
So now you're down to 75 jobs being created by, spending $1.8 billion, maybe creating 75 jobs, and then pumping some tax money into that local economy. But as I'm sure Linda will fill us in on, there's a number of other ways that you could create jobs down there and around the state, for that matter, spending a lot less money.
If you were able to, and I'm sure you've already gotten the governor's ear more than once, but for our viewers' edification, what would you tell the governor?
I would tell the governor that this plant really ruins the best asset that Southwest Virginia has, and that's their beautiful environment and their ancient forests. They have Clinch River, which has all these mussels, special species that are now endangered. That is their best asset, and it could be used for recreation. I know those jobs usually don't pay that well, but I would love to see an environmental chair or two put into the UVA Wise, because then they could take advantage of their best asset. And students would go to study environmental studies in Wise. Then with students come all kinds of restaurants, coffee shops, Staples, Walmart. That's where the tax base would come from. So that would be much better. with the Wise County plant, the water is black, the foundations of buildings are crumbling, the air is dirty, the soot is in the air. What other business would ever move into Wise County? It would just be the plant.
Construction industries never create long-term,
correct,
well-paying jobs. It's very unstable, and once the coal's gone, and coal could be gone at any time, you're not creating sustainable middle-class type of communities down there. So recreational opportunities. Clinch River is going to be used to cool that plant, and so that water will be used in that process, and that's what you're talking about as far as affecting the temperature of that, and affecting the fishing and the quality of that river. Definitely be affected. There's state university extensions down there could be expanded, satellite campuses, recreational facilities. GE has a wind plant down there. There's other opportunities that could be explored. This is really not a good solution.
Well, and the governor has appointed a climate change commission, and the object of that is to find a solution to the climate change, unless you're a doubter of that whole phenomenon, which we are not.
There aren't many.
Yeah, there are fewer and fewer of those.
Puny when they try to doubt it.
We really have to address it's really the wrong time to be building new coal capacity. We really need to put all our emphasis on alternatives as best we can. It's not the time to build a new facility for almost $2 billion that will last for 100 years. Then we'll have to, solve that problem. And once there's
it's a white elephant, is what you're saying.
Exactly. Once the federal government imposes some type of carbon tax, which is almost certain in the next administration, whoever it is, there will be an additional cost on that. We'll have to try and back out.
Try and retrofit that plant.
And they've claimed this was a clean plant, and it just is not. It's just not capable of capturing the carbon.
The reality of the matter, tell me if I'm wrong, but the reality of the matter is at this point in history, no coal plant has the capability of being clean, so to speak.
No coal plant. There was 150 plants proposed in the last couple of years nationwide. 50 of those have been struck down by various types of activity, either local advocates or at the gubernatorial level in those states or whatever. So coal is really not the way to go. I mean, Wall Street just came out recently and said, we're not going to fund coal plants unless you can prove that you're carbon capture and sequestration compatible. This plant is not. It has no technology to capture that carbon, has no technology to sequester it. In fact, the technology to sequester coal hasn't been invented yet. It doesn't exist. It's not proven. It's not known. There's no way of knowing whether it succeeds. There's no way of knowing whether the geological strata underneath that plant would support that. Nothing.
But they claimed it was clean because they had an empty lot next to the plant, the proposed plant, and they said that empty lot is where they would sequester the carbon if the technology became available. Well, the SEC saw right through that argument, and
State Corporation Commission.
Yeah, State Corporation Commission. So they would not allow them to call it clean.
So this plant gets stopped. The coal that we mine in Virginia will be shipped over to China, or they'll even use a dirtier grade of coal. And I understand the coal that we mine isn't the cleanest that you can find anyway. It's better than some, but it's not the best.
So we actually export a lot of the coal that's mined here because it's good for metallurgy in particular, more than for coal power plants. And so a lot of the coal for power plants comes from Kentucky and West Virginia primarily, where they have rail hookups to the plants. This plant isn't even going to have a rail hookup to it. It's actually going to be trucked in. So you're talking about 400 trucks a day to move 2 million tons of coal per year.
At $5 a gallon for diesel fuel.
Exactly. So it's not going to be clean.
Are we succeeding by stopping a plant like this when there's probably a plant going online in China every month?
Well, China has done some advances. They do have a supercritical IG. Well, you know more about it.
Well, they have actually. They're still using a lot less than we have. So I mean, we've created the problem historically. So
yes, yeah,
I really don't think that we don't have that much leverage over China, but I think we need to take care of our own house, and I think
the first step.
Illustrate by leading. We can't convince the rest of the world to take responsibility unless we take responsibility.
The rest of the world won't take it seriously until we take it seriously. We not only by example, just by showing that we're engaged, that it's possible, and that it matters, and it's significant. We're taking action on. And the thing is, with this plant, the argument from Dominion and others is that this plant is needed to meet our energy needs along with other infrastructure that they're proposing. And the fact is, That's just not true. Nearly every other state is looking at efficiency, investing in efficiency, and finding out that efficiency can actually meet the demand. So that, the expansion of demand nationwide is about 1.7% based on population growth and other factors. That has been proven that can be met through the right investment in efficiency. You can meet between 1% and 2% growth per year. You can zero that out by generating energy through efficiency. And so you're looking, lighting, appliances, and energy efficient buildings. It's basic stuff. It's not rocket science.
I was listening to a piece on the LEEDs. That's the energy efficient stuff.
Clean,
That's
yeah,
for buildings.
energy efficient buildings. Yep.
And it amazed that they're in the process of revamping the way they calculate and the way the check off they do on it. It's extraordinarily strict. But there was a building that was being built, and because of either where it was being built or how it was being built, the whole process of qualifying buildings is in a state of flux. I mean, a more organized state of flux, but they're trying to make some changes to make it easier to comply. Not that you get to cut corners, but apparently it's quite a process to comply with to get this LEEDs rating. There's several levels of them too, I understand.
Yeah, there's platinum, gold, and all that, and that covers much more than just energy. I mean, there's other environmental quality factors that are involved with LEED, but there's also other standards that can be used for energy efficient buildings. Energy Star has different standards. Clean Cities has different standards, and so. A good example, I think, is California. California has saved a tremendous amount of energy through their building standards they've had active since the 1970s. And in fact, their goal is by 2020, their new residential construction will be net energy zero. So it will not use any power from the grid. And they believe they can meet that. So it's definitely doable in an affordable fashion.
The Fairfax looked like they got to start with that new fire station where they're growing grass. They're growing grass on the roof
Green
and
roof.
everything on it. Yeah. And
they have an ordinance in Fairfax County that all new construction over, I think it's 10,000 square feet, will be LEED.
I think what they're doing in terms of around the country with firehouses in general, I met a young man here in Virginia who is specifically in the business of doing just that, of building firehouses that are environmentally sound, so to speak. We're going to take another break. We'll be back in 2 minutes. I hope you're enjoying the show. I'm learning a little bit that I didn't know about the environment. So stay with us, and we'll see you around the corner.
We should go back.
Go to jail for a gun crime, and your family serves a sentence with you.
I'm Bob Costas, and I've been broadcasting sports for a long time. Much of what I do is ad-libbed, but still one of the most important aspects of my job is being able to write. Narrations, essays, commentaries. It's essential to express those thoughts and concepts clearly and concisely. Good writing is essential for almost any career. And with today's advanced technology, the National Commission on Writing reports that the need to write well has never been more important. Writing is everybody's business.
Sure, my neighbors Jean and Louise, they may be superheroes with superpowers, but that doesn't make them so super at saving energy and money.
Honey?
I may not be able to harness the power of the elements, but I save significant cash and help the environment with appliances, electronics, and windows featuring the Energy Star label. So discover your own energy-saving superpowers. Go to ase.org/consumers.
Mom, Dad's making fondue again.
Now back to the Inside Scoop, Virginia. Call in live and let your voice be heard. Here again, your host, George Burke.
Welcome back to Inside Scoop Virginia. My guests tonight represent the Sierra Club here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. I have Brooks Cressman, Linda Burchfiel, and Roger Diedrich with me. We have a call from Ken and McLean. Ken?
A question for the panelists from the Sierra Club about the Wise County power plant. I wonder if they know how much it's going to cost and whether it wouldn't be worth it because it's supposed to be a clean coal plant, a hybrid coal plant.
Well,
who wants it?
The cost already is $1.8 billion just for the construction, but then it's going to get worse because Congress will pass some kind of a carbon tax in the next year, and they're talking about either cap and trade or a tax, and they're talking about the prices being from $12 to $14 a ton. So that alone, and this will emit 5.3 million tons of carbon dioxide. So right there, that ups the price every year, $75 to $100 million a year. So this coal-fired power plant is not cheap. If they say coal is cheap and clean, it's neither.
Well, I guess you told him.
Right, I suppose so. Thank you.
Any other questions there, Ken?
Well, I thought it was a clean coal plant. It's a hybrid coal plant, so it's going to be better than the old
hybrid means, I think the name hybrid applies to the fact that it will burn many different kinds of coal. And apparently a certain amount of wood, but we're not sure that there's really enough wood in the area that would make a significant contribution. So I think that may be somewhat of a red herring.
Oh, so it's not really a hybrid plant at all?
The technology that they chose, the fluidized bed, was designed to be able to burn anything. There's a lot of dirty coal piles in the area that it could burn. It could also burn some biofuel. And so that's why they chose this technology that did. But unfortunately, that's not the cleanest technology, and it actually generates a lot more air pollution than other available technologies would. But one thing is for certain, and that is it is not carbon capture compatible right now by design.
Oh. Well, thank you then.
Thank you, Ken. Off the subject, but just for a second, when you raised wood, back during the Carter administration, I worked for a congressman from New Hampshire, and one of the things we pushed was wood stove tax credits, because a lot of people burn wood up there. And at that point, you know, they were coming out with all these new types of stoves where you could, because a lot of people heat with oil. So you could get stoves that were furnaces that would burn oil if you ran out of wood or if the wood died down, and it would go back and forth. But they were very expensive. And I chased Jody Powell and others all around Washington for months. We finally got it for the short term. And there were solar energy tax credits at the same time and some other things, all of which most of that's all gone now, I guess, in recent years. But is wood a clean fuel?
Well, I think if you have a wood plant, I mean, if there is some sufficient wood somewhere, we find that acceptable.
There actually is a big wood plant in Virginia.
There is a wood plant in Virginia, and I think that counts toward its renewable share, and I think that's acceptable. I just don't think that there's a lot more available.
It's actually not running at full capacity because they can't get enough waste wood for it.
Right. So
also, there's always the carbon dioxide.
And so, and as far as burning locally in your fireplace, we're a non-attainment area, and there's a lot of particulates. So unless you really got a good, high-quality stove, we really don't encourage that. I don't use my wood stove that I have because I know it would pollute my neighbors. So.
I understand. And I want to get with you in transportation, Roger, but I do want to hear, we talked a bit about China, and you threw a very surprising statistic at me in terms of how much China is spending on efficiency or renewables. Explain. I was quite surprised.
So what came up before was, well, even if the U.S. takes a number of steps towards, reducing their carbon dioxide emissions, what about other countries like China that are opening up new power plants every couple weeks? And actually, China just, in terms of day-to-day emissions, they actually just passed the United States because of all these new coal plants they're opening up. And that's true. Now, obviously, the U.S. historically has generated a lot of emissions, but the point is, China is opening up new coal plants every couple weeks, but they're also taking a lot of other steps, and that you don't hear about as much. And so China actually has the largest installed base in the world of solar hot water heaters, more than 50% of the worldwide installed base. And they're going to double that in the next 5 to 10 years. They are also investing hundreds of billions of dollars in renewable technologies like solar photovoltaic, and other technologies. They just built a large hydroelectric dam. So they're investing in everything. Yes, they're investing in coal plants, but they're also investing in anything that they see as potentially meeting their energy needs, which are gigantic and growing.
And also, their CAFE standards are stricter than ours will be in 2020.
So their automotive mileage requirement.
Yeah, we're very proud that we got ours up to 35 miles per gallon by 2020. Theirs is already 36. We can't sell our cars in China.
Their automotive lobbyists are not as good as ours, I guess.
Not strong yet.
Right. Yeah, it's strong.
Transportation. I don't think I'd do a show where that issue doesn't come up. People are stuck in traffic. As we're stuck in traffic, we're polluting the environment. As our cars idle, we're eating up energy. I heard a statistic the other day. We have now according to certain ratings, I think Forbes magazine is one of them, we now have the worst traffic in the United States, even ahead of New York and Los Angeles. We have the rudest drivers in the United States. And I always thought that was Boston and New York, having lived in both places. We've surpassed them. And the average commuter spends an extra there's something about 60 hours a year in his or her car, beyond what the average time for commuting nationally is. Washingtonian will spend an extra 60 hours a year in his or her car.
Yeah, I spent 2.5 hours trying to get to Fredericksburg 2 days ago.
I'll tell you. I mean, it's just it's getting crazy. And what is the Sierra Club solution?
Well, I'm particularly looking at it from the the global warming impact. I mean, there's all those other issues you talked about. We are getting angry at each other for good reason, but from our perspective, on top of all that, it does contribute at least a third to some, to maybe even 40% of the carbon emissions in our region are from automobiles, and so we talk about the 3 stools of the leg to how we reduce carbon emissions from automobiles, and that's with technology, that is, better cars, hybrids and et cetera, better, more efficient cars, fuels, that is, using some biofuels as components in the cars, and then reducing vehicle miles traveled. And that's the one where we feel we're falling down. I mean, we're doing a little, as Linda said, on mileage standards, but we really have not addressed fully the problem of vehicle miles traveled. Virginia legislature is going to meet in a couple weeks and talk about transportation again and transportation funding. Sierra Club and other environmental groups are strongly urging the governor to look at ways to allocate our funding in ways that will address this issue and try and not just look for more money, but rather tie it to strategies that will reduce the vehicle miles traveled. So
I presume you're talking about heavy and light rail.
Well, he talks about there is more money for transit in the governor's plan, but more specifically, more systematically, to tie the funding to performance standards, so that when we choose a project, whether it be a road or a transit project, we pick a project that will move us in that direction, and so it will allow people options to get out of their car. So maybe we would very quickly learn that we need to spend more money on trails and sidewalks, a very cheap way to get people to get to their work. But in order for those things to work, we need to do a better job of land use planning. So I think incentivizing communities, using the transportation money to incentivize communities to do land use planning in a better, more comprehensive way, and so that we build more compact communities that lend themselves to transit.
Density around transit centers, that type of
sprawling areas with transit. So you need to build these mixed use areas that people can walk to the different activities or bicycle, And then if they do need to drive, their driving trips are shorter. So fewer car trips, shorter car trips, more walking.
Access to mass transit.
Mass transit.
Like Boston and Clarendon,
And
they're fine
That's a good
examples.
example.
So we do not support the governor's plan for more money unless they tie it to these kinds of strategies.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the ways to tie it to those kinds of strategies is to raise the price of fuel, because right now, East Falls Church, I drove by that metro station yesterday, I've never seen so many bicycles parked in front, among other things. There was a guy on television the other day who said he bought himself a little Toyota of some sort to drive back and forth to work, but he wasn't getting rid of his SUV. Even though he's not driving, I don't know, maybe he likes to look at it in the driveway or something.
One of the unmet needs of Metro is for biking facilities at the stations.
I think that's a great point, though, because Virginia does have the lowest gas taxes in the country, but the fact is, whether it be fossil fuels of any type, coal or gasoline or oil or whatever, the cost that we pay at the pump or for home heating oil or whatever don't reflect the true environmental impact of those fuels. And so if those costs were put into the price, which they will be if federal legislation gets passed and there's carbon taxes or cap and trade or whatever, those dynamics are going to change and start to favor transit, walking, biking, multiple other transportation options. And so that will start to shift that. But yeah, the price going up in the short term obviously has an impact. But what you want to do is have long-term changes.
That will have an impact over the long period of time. I certainly understand that. One of the political footballs right now is the gas tax in terms of how they're going to fund any of these transportation plans. You have the Senate, Virginia Senate, saying, well, maybe a gas tax isn't a bad idea. You have the House saying, no way, Jose. And not only the Republicans, but the Democrats in the House. And the governor somewhere in the middle. So I hate to say this, and I'm sorry, Governor, if I say it before you guys have your session, but I really don't think much is going to come out of this session. I don't think they're going to come up with an appropriate way to tax. I don't think they're going to reach agreement on how to spend that money and fully what should be done. They need to, it's almost like they need to do a Manhattan Project on transportation here in Virginia, and it's been such a political football for so many years that you still have all these, you have some folks who just want to keep paving.
That's right. I think that the citizens tend to support, I'm not sure that they support this such a tax, but there's a tendency to support more, taxing if they know where the money is going to go, that it's being spent responsibly. And so that's the argument that we're adhering to, is that if you can show that you've got a responsible plan for how you're going to use it to build a more responsible, clean infrastructure, then we'll support that, and we'll try and sell that program to the rest of the citizens.
And paving isn't a good solution because, with the price of oil going up, the cost of maintaining the existing roads, let alone building new roads, is going up. And so we're going to run out of money in 2011 with the existing tax structure.
And we're going to run out of time on this segment. And we will be back in 2 minutes. We have folks from the Sierra Club with us today. Very interesting conversation. I'm learning something. I hope you are too. So stick with us. We shall return in 2 minutes to Inside Scoop, Virginia.
One day, I forgot to throw away my trash after lunch, but then I saw it later when I was playing in the woods. The next week, I went boating with my grandpa, and there it was. I tried to go swimming, but I couldn't because of my trash. And when I went fishing, well, you can guess what I caught that day. So now I always throw away my trash in the garbage can, where it belongs.
1 in 8 Americans goes hungry. One idea helped change that. A community started a garden that blossomed into farmers markets. 1 in 6 children lives in poverty. One group of women found an answer by opening a daycare center that their neighbors could afford. Today, 36 million Americans live in poverty, but one by one, people are helping themselves and each other to change the picture of poverty to one of hope. For easy ways you can help, visit povertyusa.org.
Every year, 250,000 Americans are diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease.
My fellow scientists and I are working on treatments and a cure for this deadly disease.
Millions of lives are at stake. Alzheimer's disease affects 1 in 3 families.
We're committed to uncovering the mystery of Alzheimer's.
And we're not going to quit until the job is done.
To find out more about Alzheimer's disease, call 1-800-437-2423.
Only through research will a cure be found.
James, don't forget your helmet.
Will do.
Not a helmet. Your bike helmet.
Oh, okay. Hi, I'm James Thrash with the Washington Redskins. On the football field, a helmet is an important piece of equipment. I also wear another helmet that's just as important. A bike helmet. It's the most important piece of equipment you'll have the next time you're out on your bike. Wear yours and make sure your kids do too. Safety first with the Skins.
Now back to the Inside Scoop Virginia. Call in live and let your voice be heard. Here again, your host, George Burke.
Welcome back to Inside Scoop Virginia. I have 3 guests with me today from the Sierra Club: Linda Burchfiel, Brooks Cressman, and Roger Diedrich. We were talking about transportation, and we started talking about the whole Cool Counties, Cool Cities program. I know that a big deal of it was made here in Fairfax County, that they are participating, etc. But there are other places around the country that are, I presume, part of this program as well. Tell me about it.
Well, Cool Cities was a program that started in Seattle by the mayor there, and the Sierra Club kind of adopted that program and begun to market it elsewhere. So there are now 800 cities that have signed on to it. It's a pledge to reduce their carbon emissions, but within the city and within their community. And then when we started discussing it here, it became clear that we needed something a little different, because we're not a city, and so we needed something a little different framework for a county. So Fairfax County was a leader, along with King County in Seattle and Cook County in Illinois and some in Florida, to initiate the Cool Counties program, and it was adopted by the National Association of Counties about a year ago. So now, and it's a pledge to reduce the carbon emissions within the county by 80% by 2050, or roughly 2% per year. So they are now, we're now working with, the Sierra Club is working closely with, as an advisory committee with some other citizens on kind of developing what that plan will look like. And it involves doing an inventory of what our emissions are now, and then developing a plan for how we would lower our emissions. And so.
Is Fairfax County on course in terms of how you'd expect it to be moving at this point on the program?
Well, it's kind of starting somewhat slowly. We felt that in order to move ahead with an inventory, they needed, personnel in place, and they're just now going to be hiring an energy manager. They had to get through the budget cycle to hire this energy manager. So in the meantime, the advisory group came up with a plan for cool neighborhoods, something we could do without the energy manager. And so we've already assembled this plan, and it's a way for community, a local neighborhood, to engage their citizens, their residents, and it starts at the household level, so that a household can just basically do that on that level, to do an accounting of what their energy consumption and therefore their carbon emissions through the factors that we assign to them, and add that up, and then they can set their own internal goal to try and lower their emissions by 2% per year. And so we're looking now. We just rolled it out, and there should be something on the website very soon on the county website.
What are some of the recommendations? Obviously, turning off lights. I mean, I follow my family around the house all the time, turning lights off. And you know, I'd like to say it's altruistic. It's really because it costs me money to pay the electric bill. You know.
Well, there's just the people can pick from there's just a laundry list of things you can find suggestions, you know, at EPA and other places. But it's all
it's reducing energy use in buildings, buying energy efficient automotive fleets for the different county fleets, school buses, things like that, and then reducing energy use in the schools through similar practices. You know.
And the vampire wattage has been a big surprise
It's a good
to
public
people.
education campaign.
Yeah, you're probably more familiar with that.
Oh, go right ahead.
Well,
I don't know what it is, but it sounds interesting.
Yeah, it is, because the vampires just suck out the electricity even when you think the power is turned off. The biggest culprits are VCRs, I guess, because they save a lot of the settings. But
set-top boxes.
Set-top boxes, that's it.
Yeah.
And so they can use.
It's like 40 watts.
40 watts
when it's off.
When it's off.
Just as long as it's plugged in, it can be off.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some that almost don't go down at all when you turn them off.
There's also a big power consumption difference between appliances. We were talking earlier about plasma TVs versus LCD TVs. Similar size, you're talking more than 3 times the power consumption by the plasma TVs versus the LCD. So pretty, you know, few choices can make a big difference.
When people start measuring and paying attention to that, they just realize that they've got this old freezer in their basement that they got us, almost nothing in it, or maybe they got a refrigerator with a 6-pack of beer in it for parties. And
it's Energy Star rating, and it's old, so it's horrible.
20 years old because, so if they just realize that they just unplug that thing.
That's an initiative in some of the states. The utilities will give them a meter which shows them how much instantaneously how much power they're using, and there's a cost. Somehow they're translating that to a cost, so the person can actually see exactly how much energy they're spending and how much that's costing them at any given point in time, so they can go around and adjust their appliances and set.
I'll tell you, I see the meter that turns in my house, and it's always turning.
So, right now the cost really isn't that high because the State Corporation Commission has kept the rates down. But that's all going to change when already fuel costs. Dominion has asked for an 18% rate hike because of fuel costs, which is probably justifiable.
That doesn't even cover all their costs.
Yeah.
Either.
And then we'll have our $1.8 billion coal-fired power, and then on top of that we'll have our carbon.
And the power line. Now they want to build a power line.
Yeah,
we'll have to pay for that.
There's 3 major energy infrastructure activities that are going on. One is the Wise County Power Plant at $1.8 billion. Then there's the Lake Anna nuclear expansion that we talked about. That's $5 billion per location. So if they actually do 3 and 4, that's like $10–11 billion. Then there's the power line, the Loudon 500 kilovolt power line that people have been looking at over the last couple of years. That's $800 million. So you're talking.
And that's basically just to move energy around the grid and out of Virginia. It struck me. It crosses a piece of Virginia.
Well, funny you should mention that. Actually, so that energy is being generated on the West Virginia-Ohio border with coal plants. So it's coal by wire. It's, coal-fired power plants sending electricity. And really the goal is not so much to meet energy demand in Virginia as to basically send that energy into the Northeast, where these states have a compact to reduce their carbon footprint, and so it's difficult for them to build new transmission capability or generation capability, and so they have to move forward on energy efficiency steps in order to meet their goals of reducing their greenhouse gas emissions. So if this energy can be sent in from the outside, it sort of bypasses that whole policy structure.
It's one of the problems with carbon cap and trade systems, because that's called leakage. If the boundary for the cap and trade system is the Northeast, and they're generating, carbon emissions outside that, and the carbon is leaking. The measurement is a leakage around the edge, so to speak.
They don't have to take action to meet their energy demand and reduce their carbon. They can just import electricity, essentially.
These new light bulbs, people are starting to use them. I have a couple of them in my house. They're fluorescent, but they're not like the old-fashioned ones that flicker to come on, although they do take a little time to warm up, because I have a couple of spotlights outside that are these type of fluorescent bulbs. And I notice when it's cold, they'll come on dim, and then in 2 or 3 minutes they'll They'll brighten up, even when it's, you know, below freezing or whatever outside the house. They're not quite as bright, but I guess you could get more wattage and brighten it up, and they're still more efficient than a comparable incandescent bulb. But what I understand is there's a problem with that there's some mercury in these bulbs, and that, you know, the average Joe takes a light bulb and they throw them in the trash. I put mine in Dixie cups or back in a cardboard container, so somebody's not going to get hurt handling that in the trash. But we can't do that with these new ones because of the mercury. How should we dispose of them? What do we do with them?
Well,
now, granted, they last a long time, so we haven't reached that disposal issue yet, but at some point we're going to have a disposal problem.
You're right. They do have a little bit of mercury. However, even using those CFLs with a little bit of mercury still will reduce the total amount of mercury, because the CFLs are so efficient that it requires less electricity.
What does CFL mean?
I'm sorry, compact fluorescent light bulbs.
Thank you.
Yeah, the soft serve ice cream ones. Yeah. So anyway, because they are so efficient, they require less production from the coal-fired power plants, and so fewer emissions. Now, for the disposal, Roger, do you have an idea about that?
You know, they should be disposed as hazardous waste, and the county will collect them.
Like we do with paints, or we do with computer monitors, and which also apparently
you
contain
should not throw your
those
computer, your monitor in the trash, and that's, you know, that's an issue. But I mean, the best solution, the longer-term solution, is that we ought to have a producer responsibility approach, and that would be that companies that make products should be willing to take them back or come up. They are the ones that are making the profit. They should come up with a program, a plan to dispose of them. And in fact, if they are given that charge, they will not only will they probably, you know, have the best way to dispose of them, but they will redesign their products. They will design the hazard out of them in the long run, and they would incentivize them to, you know, come up with better designs.
Or look at it as be able to recycle more of the components to use them again. Obviously, they're looking for efficiency. They're looking for profit ultimately, and the more you can, you know, people don't realize that recycling is profitable these days.
Or waste is inefficiency.
We have less than a minute left. Any one of you, in about 15 seconds, tell our viewer if there's something more than anything else that our viewers can do to conserve energy. And by conserving energy, we've learned that in fact it helps the environment overall. What would be that recommendation?
Well, switch to CFL. Compact fluorescent light bulbs is the first.
Slow down.
I think just becoming aware of your energy use, starting to learn about your energy use, learning how you're using energy around your house. Have a home energy audit. And look at what you can do around your house.
And then decide what works for you. There's no one way to do this. It's many
different
little
people
ways.
have different problems.
Well, I really want to thank you folks for being on. It was enlightening for me, and I think it was enlightening for
Well, thank you for having us
you.
so we could have a stage.
And we'll see you next week.